On Christmas Eve, I stood in my son's kitchen holding a tray of homemade cookies when my daughter-in-law yanked it from my hands. "Stop making a fuss," she said. "Go wash the dishes and don't embarrass me." Her words hit like a slap. I froze. In that moment, I realized I wasn't family. I was the maid. I had swallowed my pride for years, trying to keep peace. But that night, something inside me broke. When she threw her trash bag at me, I took off the rubber gloves and said calmly, "I'm not washing dishes tonight." The room went silent. Even my son, David, stared at me as if I'd spoken a foreign language. No one moved. No one defended me. I turned away, took my phone from my pocket, and looked again at the email that had arrived that morning from a law firm I'd never heard of. "Mrs. Susan Whitmore, you've been named sole beneficiary of the late artist Margaret Hensley's estate." I read it again and again. It didn't feel real. I hadn't spoken to Margaret in decades. She'd been my best friend in college, a free spirit who believed art could save anyone. Why would she leave anything to me? But the words on that screen lit something inside. I felt a small spark, the first one in years. That Christmas Eve, surrounded by noise and laughter that didn't include me, I sat quietly at the kitchen table. I remembered how I had once lived, teaching children, raising my son, dreaming of small things that made life sweet. I remembered who I used to be. When I left that night, snow fell softly on the porch. David ran after me, voice low. "Mom, don't be mad at Melissa. She didn't mean it." I smiled sadly. "Son, some things aren't small. Some words wake you up." That night, for the first time in decades, I didn't cry. I boiled tea, opened my laptop, and wrote a simple reply to that law firm. "Dear Miss Graves, I confirm my identity. Please send details regarding Margaret Hensley's estate." 15 minutes later, a message arrived. "Mrs. Whitmore, congratulations. You inherit the entire property in Charleston, South Carolina, along with a trust fund left by the late artist Hensley. Please visit within 10 days. I sat there stunned, the steam from my tea curling in the air. Charleston, a place I'd never been, now held my future. I looked around my small Vermont house. The walls carried years of quiet sadness, the smell of old winters. My reflection in the window looked older than I remembered. Silver hair, tired eyes, a life of giving without return. I whispered to myself, "Susan, you've done enough. Now it's your turn." The next morning, I made coffee, packed a small bag, and decided not to tell anyone, not David, not Melissa. I knew what would happen if I did. Melissa never ignored anything valuable. That afternoon, the phone rang. Melissa's voice was sugar sweet. "Mom, you must be mad at me about last night," she said. "You know I just wanted everything perfect. Don't cook anything for Christmas, okay? Just bring your apron." I smiled into the phone. "All right," I said quietly. She laughed, thinking she'd won again. When the call ended, I sat back, calm and clear. This time, I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't explain. I would simply go. That night, I opened a drawer and found an old wooden box. Inside was my first camera, a rusted Nikon FM2. It had belonged to Margaret. My fingers trembled as I touched it. Memories flooded back, 2 girls in New York, chasing sunsets with no money and endless dreams. I remembered her laugh. "Susan," she used to say, "if you ever lose yourself, look through the lens. You'll find your light again." And here she was, helping me find it, even after death. That night, I wrote 3 notes to myself. 1, call the lawyer in the morning. 2, book a train ticket to Charleston. 3, tell no one. The next morning, I woke before dawn. Frost covered the window. I felt alive, nervous, but alive. I called Miss Graves, the attorney. Her voice was warm and kind. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm Eleanor Graves. Please accept my condolences. Miss Hensley spoke highly of you." My throat tightened. "She did?" "Yes," Eleanor said softly. "She left a note with her will to the only friend who saw light in me when I couldn't see it myself." Tears filled my eyes. Eleanor continued. "She left you her house, her art collection, and a trust worth $8 million. The words barely reached me. I whispered, "There must be a mistake." No mistake, she said. There's only one condition. She wanted you to return to art, to hold a camera again. I couldn't speak. I hadn't touched a camera in 40 years. Eleanor's voice softened. She said you'd find yourself again in Charleston. When I hung up, the house felt too small to contain everything inside me: grief, gratitude, disbelief, hope. That night, I packed a few clothes, old photographs, and that Nikon. As I zipped the bag, I said quietly, "Thank you, Margaret." Christmas lights twinkled outside, but I felt no pain now, only peace. As I left for the station the next morning, snowflakes drifted down like blessings. My breath made small clouds in the cold. The train to Charleston waited, long and silver. I stepped inside, found my seat by the window, and watched the white Vermont fields fade into distance. For the first time in years, I didn't feel trapped. I didn't feel invisible. I felt free. And as the train rolled south, I smiled to myself. "Let them think I'm weak," I whispered. "They'll soon see what strength really looks like." They thought I was weak, but the train wheels rolling south said otherwise. Each mile carried me farther from a life that had shrunk too small. The snow outside turned to rain, and the gray Vermont fields faded behind me. I pressed my forehead to the glass and whispered, "You'll see what strength looks like soon enough." Hours passed. Towns blurred. By dawn, pine trees gave way to green fields and the air smelled warmer, like salt and oranges. I had never been to Charleston, but somehow it already felt like a promise. When the train slowed into the station, I clutched my small suitcase. A woman stood on the platform holding a cardboard sign that read, "Mrs. Susan Whitmore." She had neat silver hair and kind brown eyes. "Mrs. Whitmore?" she asked. "Yes." She smiled. "I'm Eleanor Graves. We've spoken on the phone. Welcome to Charleston." Her voice had a steadiness that comforted me. She took my bag, guided me to a navy blue car, and as we drove through cobblestone streets lined with oak trees and old houses, I felt my heart lift. The city shimmered in soft morning light. "This place," Eleanor said, "has a soul of its own. Miss Hensley loved it here." "I can see why," I whispered. When the car turned through an iron gate, I forgot to breathe. Before me stood a tall red brick house with white pillars and wide windows. Orange trees filled the garden, their blossoms scenting the warm air. Eleanor parked and said quietly, "Welcome home, Mrs. Whitmore. This is Hensley House." For a moment I couldn't move. This wasn't a house. It was a living memory, the kind of place that carried stories in every wall. A tall man in a gray suit came down the steps. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he said, bowing slightly. "I'm Harold Bennett, the house manager. Miss Hensley asked me to keep the home ready. She said one day its true owner would come." His words sank deep. The true owner. I stepped inside. Light from tall windows poured across mosaic floors. The air smelled faintly of old wood, oil paint, and orange blossoms. My eyes fell on the walls, and my heart stopped. Framed photographs covered every inch. Black and white shots of people, markets, city corners, and me. Me, young and laughing with a camera around my neck. Me standing beside Margaret in a student gallery. Me frozen in moments I had long forgotten. My hand shook as I touched the glass. "She kept all of these," I whispered. Eleanor nodded. She said, "If Susan forgets her own light, I'll keep it for her." Tears blurred my vision. For 40 years I had thought my passion was lost. But here it was, hanging on the walls, waiting. Eleanor handed me a sealed envelope. "She left you a letter." I broke the wax. "My dearest Susan, you once told me the world can be dark, so I leave you this house filled with light. Every wall, every window, every beam of sun is yours. Remember who you are. The world still needs your eyes. Love, M." I sat down on the nearest chair and cried quietly, not from sadness, but from a strange joy. Harold brought tea. "Miss Margaret always said you'd come back one day," he murmured. "Now you have." Eleanor explained the legal side. "The trust is in your name. It's large but restricted. You can use it only for art, education, or maintaining the estate. That was Miss Hensley's wish. I nodded. That's exactly what I want. When I signed the papers, my hands trembled, not from fear, but meaning. For the first time in years, I was signing for myself. Eleanor smiled. Congratulations, Mrs. Whitmore. From this moment on, Hensley House is officially yours. Harold bowed. Welcome home, ma'am. Outside, sunlight shimmered on the garden pool. I whispered home. That evening, I walked through each room slowly. The study smelled of books. The gallery held shelves of negatives and an old Leica camera. On the desk sat a picture of two young women, Margaret and me, arms around each other, laughing. I placed my fingers on the frame. We did it, Margaret. You kept your promise. Later, in the quiet house, I opened my suitcase and took out the Nikon. The battery still worked. I lifted it, aimed at the orange trees glowing in moonlight, and clicked the shutter. The sound was small, but it woke something deep inside me. For the first time in 40 years, I had taken a photo again. I whispered, I'm back. The next weeks flowed softly. I rose early, walked the garden, and practiced taking pictures. The curve of light on a leaf, the reflection in the pool. Harold became a gentle companion, always ready with tea and quiet humor. Eleanor stopped by often to handle paperwork and sometimes just to talk. You seem happier, she said one afternoon. I think I'm alive again, I replied. But peace never lasts long when greed still watches. One morning, Eleanor entered with a newspaper. You should see this. The headline read, Mysterious heir to photographer Hensley revealed. Retired teacher from Vermont inherits $8 million estate. My picture filled half the page, me standing in front of the house, smiling faintly. I sighed. Well, so much for privacy. It's a respectful piece, Eleanor said. Maybe, I said softly, but news travels fast. Far away in Vermont, it was traveling faster than I could imagine. Scene switch, Vermont. Melissa scrolled through her phone, cappuccino steaming beside her. A headline stopped her cold. Her eyes widened. Susan Whitmore? 8 million? She reread it, jaw tightening. Then she printed the article and stormed into David's office. Look at this, she said, voice sharp. David took the paper, blinking. Mom inherited from who? A photographer. Some Margaret Hensley. She's famous. She left Mom a mansion and millions. David frowned. That's amazing. Amazing, Melissa snapped. Do you get it? She's sitting on money and we're her family. We need to protect her. Protect? He echoed. Yes, David. She's old. Anyone could take advantage. We should manage the assets, help her. David looked uncertain. Melissa, maybe she deserves this. Let her enjoy it. She smiled, sweet and dangerous. Of course. We'll just help her manage it. That night she started planning. Back to Charleston. A week later, I was trimming orange branches when the phone rang. Mom. Melissa's voice dripped honey. We've missed you so much. Where are you? We saw something about Charleston. Oh, I'd love to visit. I smiled slightly. You're welcome anytime. Really? Of course. Come ahead. When I hung up, I looked at the pool shimmering in the afternoon sun. My gut told me exactly what that call meant. The game was about to begin. 7 days later, a white SUV stopped outside Hensley House. Melissa stepped out first, designer dress, big smile, arms wide. Mom, she said, hugging me like nothing had happened. David followed, quiet, eyes down. This home is gorgeous, she gushed. I'm so happy for you. Thank you, I said simply. She glanced around at the silver bowls, the old oil paintings, the antique frames. I could see numbers flicker behind her eyes. Eleanor greeted them politely, then disappeared into her office, giving me a subtle nod. Be careful. I gave them a tour. Melissa's voice never stopped. Oh, this must be worth thousands. What about that frame? This photo's probably priceless. When we sat for dinner, she turned sugar sweet again. Mom, why don't you let us help you manage this place? I have real estate experience, you know. I set down my fork. Thank you, Melissa, but I prefer to handle it myself. It keeps me active." Her smile froze for half a second. "Of course, Mom. Just offering." That night I wrote in my notebook, Melissa arrived. Smile perfect, eyes different. She came to hunt, not to visit. The next morning they left. At the gate, Eleanor whispered, "Be careful, Mrs. Whitmore. People are kind only when they want nothing from you." I watched the car drive away, the orange trees swaying in the breeze. Inside, my heart was calm but alert. I knew that visit was only the beginning. 3 days later, the phone rang again. David's voice was awkward. "Mom, we've been thinking maybe you should move your assets into a shared family account, just for safety." "A shared family fund?" I repeated slowly. "How thoughtful. Let me speak to Eleanor about that." The silence on the line was thick. I imagined Melissa frowning beside him. "Sure," David said quickly. "Whatever makes you comfortable." After we hung up, I stared out at the garden. The pool surface was smooth as glass, calm on top, current below. I called Eleanor. She listened, then said, "Classic. They'll try to get control legally. Let's set a trap." I nodded. 2 days later, Melissa arrived again, smiling like sunshine. "Mom, I had my accountant friend draft some papers. All very simple. You just sign, and we can help manage things for you." She handed me a thick packet. I flipped through it. "I don't understand some of these terms. How about Eleanor stop by today?" "I already called her." For a split second, Melissa's face tightened. "Of course. The more the merrier." 10 minutes later, Eleanor walked in, plain clothes, glasses, polite smile. Melissa didn't recognize her. We sat around the table. Eleanor pretended to read the papers. "So this grants full power of attorney to Mr. David Wright and Mrs. Melissa Wright, including selling the estate and assets?" Melissa laughed lightly. "Oh, just formality. We'd never actually—" "And this clause," Eleanor said, "splits profits if items are sold." "Who added that?" "Just procedure," Melissa said too fast. Eleanor looked up at me. "Mrs. Whitmore, maybe we should pause." I nodded. "Yes, I'll review it later." Melissa kept smiling, but her knuckles were white. "Of course, Mom." After they left, Eleanor sighed. "We have enough. They're trying to seize control. Let's be patient. Let them dig deeper." I exhaled slowly. They think I'm still the woman who washed dishes in silence. They're wrong. That evening, I sat in the library, pen in hand, and wrote, "They want to prove I'm weak. I'll show them how strong peace can be." Outside, the orange trees rustled softly. In the reflection of the window, I saw my own eyes, steady, bright, alive. I whispered, "Let's see what they try next." That thought stayed with me all night as I sat by the window, listening to the soft wind moving through the orange trees. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was watching, patient, steady, quiet like a lake before a storm. The house glowed with warm light, but under that calm I could already feel movement, like ripples spreading far away. I knew Melissa wasn't done. People like her never stop when they think there's more to take. The next morning, Harold brought tea and said, "You didn't sleep much, ma'am." I smiled. "Sometimes peace comes after the battle, Harold. I'm just waiting for their next move." He nodded. "Then I'll keep watch too." For 3 days, nothing happened. I photographed the garden, the silver pool, and the orange blossoms heavy with sunlight. I tried to live normally, but a small chill stayed under my skin, whispering soon. Then on the fourth morning, Harold came in with a worried face. "Mrs. Susan," he said quietly, "I overheard something on the old landline. Miss Melissa called someone named Clara. Seems to be her accountant. They talked about bringing a psychologist to test your memory, to prove you're not able to handle legal matters." For a moment, I sat silent. Then I let out a slow breath. "So," I said softly, "they plan to call me incompetent and take control." "I'm afraid so," Harold said. "They want the court to say you can't make decisions." I didn't get angry. I just laughed once, quiet and sharp. "Harold, I spent 40 years teaching children to read and write, paying bills, raising a home, surviving widowhood, and now they think I can't sign my own name?" He looked sad. They don't see your strength, ma'am. I smiled. That's fine. They'll see it soon enough. That evening, I wrote everything down in my notebook. Every call, every word Melissa had said, the time, the plan, the fake sweetness. Then I picked up the phone and called Eleanor. She listened without surprise. They're setting up a capacity test, she said. Good. Let them. We'll prepare something better. What do you mean? I asked. They'll come to my office tomorrow. We'll make a new will. The next morning, I wore a white blouse and brushed my silver hair until it shone. When I looked in the mirror, I saw not an old woman, but someone reborn. At Eleanor's office, the morning sun streamed through the window. She pushed a document toward me. This, she said, is your protection. A clause that says if anyone in your family tries to declare you mentally unfit or moves against your wishes in court, they'll be automatically removed from your inheritance. Every penny, every object, gone. I smiled slowly. That's brilliant. She nodded. They dig their own grave the moment they try. I signed my name with a steady hand. Then let's make sure the pen writes the truth. When I stood up, Eleanor said, Margaret would be proud of you. You're not just surviving, you're standing tall. I smiled. That's the only way to live. A week passed quietly. The sky was clear, the air warm. But something inside told me the storm wasn't over. Then it came, one phone call that changed everything again. Melissa's voice filled my ear, syrupy, sweet as always. Mom, how are you? I was thinking maybe we can bring a specialist down there, just to check your health. You know, peace of mind for everyone. I smiled into the phone, though she couldn't see it. That's very kind. I'm feeling wonderful, but yes, bring whoever you wish. Oh, good, she said quickly. We'll come this weekend. Love you. When she hung up, I laughed softly. Love me or love my house? I whispered. That Saturday, she arrived again, high heels clicking on the porch, David behind her, nervous as always. And with them came another woman, younger in a gray coat, holding a briefcase. Mom, Melissa said brightly, this is Dr. Clara. She's an expert. She'll just talk to you for a bit. The doctor smiled politely. Just routine questions, Mrs. Whitmore. I nodded calm. Of course. Would you like some tea first? We sat in the sunroom, light falling over the table. Dr. Clara began gently. What day is it today? Saturday, I said. And the year? 2025. Your full name? Susan Margaret Whitmore, I said, adding softly. The middle name was my best friend's. She smiled. And can you tell me where you are? In my home, I said simply, in Charleston, South Carolina, where the orange trees grow and my peace lives. She looked at me, maybe expecting confusion, but there was none. Every answer was clear, sharp, confident. After 20 minutes, she closed her notebook. Mrs. Whitmore, you're perfectly capable. Melissa's face stiffened. Are you sure? Maybe run another test. Dr. Clara shook her head. Your mother is fine. I smiled. Thank you, doctor. I appreciate your honesty. When they left, I stood at the door and watched Melissa stalk toward the car, her heels stabbing the gravel. She was furious. I could feel it. That night, Eleanor came by. So how did it go? Perfect, I said, showing her the doctor's card. We have proof of my capacity now. Eleanor chuckled. Then the next time they try, they'll fail before they begin. Days turned into weeks. The gallery room started to shine again. I cleaned frames, organized negatives, and planned something Margaret would have loved. A new art show called Light Doesn't Die. The theme was simple, photographs taken in hard times that still carry beauty. Eleanor helped with the permits, Harold handled invitations, and soon people from around Charleston began to whisper about the event. On the night of the opening, the gallery glowed with soft lamps. People filled the rooms, whispering over each frame. I stood by the main wall, wearing a navy blue dress and holding my old camera like an old friend. When I stepped forward to speak, my voice trembled, but only for a second. I used to think my life ended after loss and silence, I said. But light never truly leaves us. It just waits until we open our eyes again. The room went still, and then came long applause, gentle but powerful. The next morning, newspapers carried my picture again. From dishwashing to gallery opening, the rebirth of Susan Whitmore. People called me brave. I wasn't brave. I was just tired of being small. Somewhere far away, Melissa saw the article. Scene switch, Vermont. Melissa scrolled through her tablet. Her hand shook. She's turning herself into a hero, she snapped, slamming the device on the table. David looked up from his coffee. She deserves it, Melissa. You were cruel to her. Cruel? She laughed sharply. I was keeping her grounded. And now she's acting like a celebrity. This isn't over. She picked up her phone and called her lawyer friend, Mark Ellis. I need to know if there's a way to challenge her will. Mark paused on the other end. Susan Whitmore? The one with attorney Eleanor Graves? Yes. Melissa, he said slowly, if Graves is handling her estate, you'll lose. She's airtight. Be careful. Melissa hung up without a word, jaw clenched. We'll see, she whispered. Back to Charleston. I didn't know about her call, but I could feel the air changing again. The nights grew heavier, the silence thicker. Then late one evening, Harold came to my study. Mrs. Susan, he said quietly, there's been movement near the gate. A silver SUV parked twice this week, late at night. The same plate both times. I looked up from my notebook. Did you get the number? He nodded. Good, I said. Keep watching. Let's not alert them yet. Eleanor came the next morning. I also received a notice, she said, sliding a paper toward me. Someone filed a fake transfer of ownership for the property. We stopped it immediately. But it means they've started forging your signature. I felt a cold calm settle in my chest. Then it's time. Eleanor met my eyes. Time for what? Time to let them walk into their own trap. We installed small security cameras around the house, hidden in the corners, near doors, near the garden path. Harold helped, quiet and efficient. Are you sure you want to see it happen? He asked. Yes, I said softly. If they cross that line, I want to see who they've become. For 2 nights, nothing happened. The recording showed only wind and shadows. But on the 3rd night, near midnight, an alert flashed on my phone. Movement, back garden. I leaned forward, heart calm, eyes sharp. 2 figures appeared on the screen, a man and a woman, moving quietly toward the back door. I recognized them instantly, David and Melissa. Melissa held a flashlight and a large bag. David stumbled slightly. He'd been drinking. Keep watch, I whispered to Harold. Don't stop them yet. On the video feed, Melissa hissed, "Cecile has to be in the safe. Hurry before she wakes up." David's voice shook. Melissa, I don't want to do this. Mom doesn't deserve. Don't go soft, she snapped. She's squatting on money that should be ours. Just open the safe. He hesitated. I don't know the code. Try her birthday, she said. The safe beeped once, twice, then flashed red. Wrong. Damn it, she cursed. She changed it. David rubbed his head. I'm done, Melissa. Let's go. She grabbed his arm hard. No. Help me. We're this close. Just then, the alarm tripped. A loud siren tore through the night. Harold hit the main switch, turning on every light in the house. I walked down the stairs slowly, each step echoing. My shadow stretched across the floor like an old memory. They froze at the sound of my voice. You don't need to look anymore, I said softly. I already expected this. Melissa spun around, her face pale. What are you doing here? I live here, I said. The question is, what are you doing here at midnight with fake documents and a drunk husband? David dropped the bag, eyes filled with shame. Mom, I'm sorry. Melissa backed away. It's not my fault. He told me to come. He said we needed the money. I tilted my head. Really? Then I'm sure the police will love to hear that version. Sirens wailed outside. Eleanor arrived first, then 2 officers. She carried a folder full of papers, the fort transfer, the recordings, the signed witness statements. One officer read the charges calmly: attempted asset theft, trespassing, document forgery. Melissa screamed, "You can't arrest me. I'm family." Eleanor's voice was cool. Family doesn't break into your house with fake papers. As they cuffed her, she glared at me, eyes wild. "You set me up." I met her gaze without blinking. "No, Melissa. You set yourself up. I just turned on the light." They took her away. The door shut, leaving silence. David sat on the floor, face in his hands. "Mom, I'm sorry," he whispered. "I couldn't stop her. I was too weak." I walked over, placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then start being strong now, son." He looked up, eyes red. "Can you ever forgive me?" I smiled sadly. "Forgiveness is easy, David. What's hard is forgetting. But we'll both try." When dawn came, sunlight spilled across the floor, touching the old photographs on the wall. I looked at Margaret's picture and whispered, "You were right. Light shows everything, even the ugly truth." Eleanor arrived later with the morning paper. The headline read, "Charleston woman outsmarts family scheme. Police praise her courage." She smiled. "You're a hero now." I laughed softly. "I'm just a woman who finally said enough." Outside, the garden was bright again. The air smelled sweet, clean. For the first time in years, I felt completely free. But as I stood there, a quiet thought came. This isn't the end. Not yet. There's still something I have to do. That thought followed me like a heartbeat. The storm had passed, the truth was out, but peace doesn't come just because the noise stops. It comes when you forgive, rebuild, and find purpose again. The house was quiet the morning after Melissa's arrest. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows, touching the photographs that lined the walls. Each beam of light felt like a whisper from Margaret, reminding me that victory without kindness turns bitter. Harold knocked softly and entered with tea. "Ma'am, the reporters keep calling. Everyone wants your story." I smiled. "Let them wait. My story isn't finished yet." He nodded. "What will you do now?" I looked toward the garden, where dew sparkled on the orange trees. "I think it's time to give something back." That afternoon, Eleanor arrived, calm as ever, holding a folder. "Melissa has been charged formally. The police have everything: recordings, fake contracts, camera footage. You won't have to worry." I nodded. "Thank you. I'm not angry anymore. I just hope she learned something." Eleanor gave me a small smile. "That's rare, Mrs. Susan. Most people want revenge." "I already had mine," I said softly. "I lived to see the truth. That's enough." Outside, the breeze rustled the orange leaves. I felt the house breathe again. It no longer carried tension, only peace. That night, I sat on the porch with a notebook and wrote slowly, "I want to create something that helps others find their light." The next day, I told Eleanor my idea. "I want to use the gallery to teach older women photography, free classes," I said. "Many of them have been silenced, ignored, or made small like I was. Maybe holding a camera will help them see themselves again." Eleanor's face softened. "That's beautiful. Margaret would have loved that." The weeks that followed were full of motion. Harold cleared one of the bright rooms near the garden. We set up old cameras, chairs, and a big wooden table. I printed a sign: "The light returns. Free photography for women 50 and above." At first, only 2 women came, a retired nurse named Janet and a widow named Linda. They were shy, unsure, holding the cameras like fragile glass. "It doesn't matter if you shake," I told them. "Every photo starts with courage, not skill." We began with simple things: light through leaves, the curve of a teacup, the wrinkles in our own hands. Soon more women arrived. Word spread fast. The laughter of silver-haired beginners filled the gallery every Saturday. Sometimes they cried when they saw their pictures, because for the first time in years, they'd created something of their own. I told them, "We don't shoot to be perfect. We shoot to remember we're still alive. Meanwhile, David began visiting again. At first he came quietly, bringing coffee, helping Harold in the garden. He looked thinner, older, but his eyes were softer. One afternoon he knocked on my studio door. "Mom, can I help you set up the next class?" "Of course," I said. We spent hours hanging prints, stringing lights, and sweeping the floor. When we finished, he looked around and whispered, "It feels peaceful here." I smiled. "It's because no one's pretending anymore." He hesitated. "Mom, I filed for divorce." I turned slowly. I couldn't stay in that marriage. I let Melissa control me for too long. I nodded. "I know. I saw it in your eyes that night." He looked at me with shame. "You should hate me for not standing up for you." I reached for his hand. "No, David. Hate chains people to the past. I want you free." Tears slipped down his face. "I don't deserve your kindness." "You're my son," I said softly. "You don't have to deserve it. You just have to learn from it." He nodded, trembling. That night he moved into the guest house behind the gallery. For the first time in years, my son and I shared quiet mornings again, coffee on the porch, the scent of oranges drifting between us. The newspapers kept writing about my story. Some called me Grandma with Grit. Others wrote, "The woman who turned humiliation into hope." I didn't pay much attention, but people started visiting the gallery just to meet me. One morning, a stranger, a woman around 60, came in holding a newspaper clipping. "You're Mrs. Whitmore?" she asked. "Yes." Her eyes filled with tears. "My daughter-in-law treats me the same way yours did. When I read about you, I cried. You gave me courage." I took her hands. "You have it already. You just needed someone to remind you." That day I realized something important. My pain had become a bridge for others to cross. Weeks later, Eleanor stopped by with an envelope. "It's from the University of South Carolina," she said. "They want you to speak at a conference called Aging is Not Weakness. Will you do it?" I froze. I've never spoken in front of a big crowd. Eleanor smiled. "You've spoken to life itself. Just tell them the truth." I agreed. On the day of the event, the hall was packed, hundreds of faces, some young, some old, all waiting. My knees shook until I spotted David in the front row, smiling with quiet pride. I stepped to the microphone. I used to think getting older meant becoming smaller. I began. That our voices should soften, our dreams fade, our needs shrink. But one Christmas night, I realized I'd been washing dishes my whole life, not just in kitchens, but in relationships that made me feel less. So I stopped. The hall went still. Every word came from the deepest part of me. I learned that silence can drown us, but speaking up can save us. It's never too late to choose yourself. When I finished, the applause lasted long enough to make me cry. Reporters took photos. Some women stood and hugged me. One said, "You spoke for all of us." That night, I wrote in my journal, maybe my voice was waiting all along. I just needed to use it. The months rolled on. The Light Returns classes grew into a small movement. Local media covered it. Donations came in. We used every penny to fund workshops for older women starting over, those leaving unhappy homes, those rebuilding confidence. David helped manage the program. He had changed too, gentler, patient, smiling again. Sometimes I caught him teaching kids at the community center how to use an old camera. I'd stand at the door and just watch, my heart warm. One afternoon, he came inside holding a dusty wooden box. "Remember this?" he asked. Inside was the old Polaroid camera I'd given him when he was 10. "It still works," he said. "I thought the kids could learn with it." I touched the box and smiled. "You found your light too, David." He looked at me, eyes clear. "Thanks to you." Melissa's trial came and went quickly. The evidence was solid. She received 2 years of home confinement. When the verdict was read, I felt no triumph, only quiet sadness. Sometimes losing freedom is the only way people learn its value. Eleanor asked if I wanted to see her. I shook my head. "No need. That chapter is closed." From that day, I stopped following the news. I poured myself into the classes and the gallery. By autumn, the garden was heavy with oranges again. The scent drifted through the open doors as women laughed, snapping photos in the golden light. I stood in the middle of it all, camera in hand, watching them. Janet caught me smiling and teased, "Careful, Susan, you're becoming famous." I laughed. Not famous, Janet. One evening after everyone left, I sat alone in the gallery. The sun dipped low, painting the walls gold. I looked around, photos everywhere, wrinkled hands holding cameras, eyes shining, smiles reborn. This place used to be filled with Margaret's art. Now it held mine and theirs. I whispered, "We did it, Margaret. We turned pain into light." On the desk lay an unopened letter from a magazine editor. I tore it open and read aloud, "Dear Mrs. Whitmore, your story has touched millions. We would like to feature you in our December issue, Women Who Inspire. Please consider sharing your journey in your own words." I stared at the page. My story? In my own words. For a moment I saw that Christmas night again, rubber gloves, dishes, humiliation, and then the train to Charleston, the first step toward freedom. Maybe it was time to write it all down. That winter, I began to write my memoir. Every morning, I brewed tea, opened the windows to let in the orange blossom air, and typed. I wrote about love, loss, friendship, betrayal, forgiveness, and the power of saying enough. I titled it Not Anyone's Mom, But Me. Eleanor laughed when she heard it. "That's perfect." David grinned. "That's you, Mom." The book was short, just 200 pages, but it carried my heart. When it was published locally, letters poured in. Women from across the country wrote to me. One said, "I was forced to sell my home after my husband died. Your story gave me courage to start again." Another wrote, "I'm 57 and thought my life was over. You made me believe it isn't." Every letter felt like a candle being lit somewhere far away. The following spring, I walked through the garden early one morning. Dew sparkled on every leaf. The orange trees were in bloom again. I whispered to the air, "Margaret, we found the light, and now we're passing it on." Eleanor's voice called from the porch, "Mrs. Susan, there's something you should see." She handed me the morning paper. Across the front page, in bold letters, "The Light Returns Foundation receives national grant empowering older women through art." My breath caught. "A foundation?" I said. Eleanor smiled. "Yes, the program you started has become official. You have funding to expand to other cities." I looked out at the sun climbing above the trees. Tears blurred my eyes, but they were warm, happy ones. I whispered, "This is the light Margaret meant." That evening, we held a small celebration. The women brought homemade cakes, fruit pies, and laughter. David played old songs on a portable speaker. As the sky turned pink, I raised a glass. "To all of us," I said. "To everyone who thought their story was over but found a new chapter." They clinked glasses and the air filled with soft music and joy. When night came, I stood alone for a moment in the garden. Fireflies blinked around the orange trees. I could almost hear Margaret's laughter in the wind. I said softly, "The light always returns." I said those words quietly that night in the orange garden, and the wind carried them into the dark like a promise. I didn't know then how deeply they would come true. The months that followed moved like a slow song. Charleston bloomed with new life. The gallery filled with visitors, laughter, and women whose eyes shone brighter each week. They weren't just learning photography, they were learning how to see themselves again. Every time I watched one of them lift a camera with trembling hands, I saw the woman I used to be, scared, quiet, afraid to speak. And each time they pressed a shutter, I felt that fear fade a little more, in me and in them. One warm morning, Janet came running across the garden waving a letter. "Susan," she called, "they printed your story in Southern Life magazine. You're on the cover." I took the magazine in disbelief. There I was, silver hair, soft smile, camera around my neck, standing beneath the orange trees. The headline read, "From washing dishes to lighting lives, the story of Susan Whitmore." I couldn't help laughing. I had never imagined my life would turn into a headline. David teased me later that day. "Mom, looks like you're famous now." "I'm not famous," I said. "I'm just finally visible." He smiled. "You've always been visible. Some people just refuse to look." Autumn came early that year. Leaves drifted across the porch, and the air smelled like salt and oranges. The women's classes grew even larger. Some came from nearby towns, others from other states. They said, "I read about you, and I had to come see this place." I always welcomed them with tea and a smile. "You're not late," I'd say. "Light doesn't keep time." Each Saturday, the gallery buzzed with laughter and camera clicks. We called it the Light Hour. Eleanor often stopped by to check on the foundation accounts, though she secretly loved to stay for class. She'd pick up an old camera and pretend she wasn't nervous, but her shots always came out beautiful. "You've got an artist's hand," I told her once. She laughed. "No, Mrs. Susan. I just have a good teacher." Then came the first anniversary of that fateful Christmas, the one that started everything. I woke up early, brewed coffee, and sat by the window as dawn spread gold across the sky. A year ago, I'd been standing in a kitchen wearing rubber gloves, humiliated in front of my family. Today, I sat in my own home, surrounded by peace, freedom, and light. It felt almost unreal. I decided to mark the day not with sadness, but with gratitude. I invited everyone, the women from my classes, Eleanor, Harold, and of course David, for a Christmas gathering at the gallery. We called it the Christmas of Light. Preparations began a week before. The women baked gingerbread cookies, spice pies, and lemon bars. Harold strung lights across the orange trees until the garden sparkled like a fairy tale. David built a small wooden stage and hung a sign above it that read, "We are the light." On Christmas Eve, Charleston glowed under a thin fall of snow, rare for the South. The street shimmered. The gallery doors opened wide, letting in warmth and music. I wore a simple white dress, soft wool around my shoulders. People began to arrive, laughing, hugging, carrying trays of food and wrapped gifts. The air smelled like cinnamon, pine, and oranges. Inside, every wall glittered with photographs, not of Margaret or me this time, but of the women I'd taught. Their eyes, their smiles, their hands holding cameras. It wasn't my story anymore. It was ours. As the evening went on, I stood near the old fireplace, watching everyone. Linda, once too shy to speak, was telling a joke that had everyone laughing. Janet danced with Harold to an old Christmas song. Even Eleanor, serious Eleanor, was smiling so hard her eyes shone like glass. David came up beside me, holding 2 cups of warm cider. "You did it, Mom," he said quietly. "We did it," I corrected. "All of us." He nodded, eyes full of peace I hadn't seen in years. "I can't believe how far we've come." I looked around. "You see, David, life doesn't end when others underestimate you. It begins when you finally stop underestimating yourself." He nodded, his voice low. "You are right. The light really does come back." Later that night, David clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. "Everyone, before we eat, I have something for my mom." He lifted a large frame covered with red paper and turned it toward me. The crowd hushed as he peeled the paper away. It was a photograph of me, taken during one of our classes. I was smiling, head tilted slightly, camera in hand. Beneath it, in his handwriting, were the words, "This is my mother, the woman who taught me to stand tall." I pressed my hand to my mouth, tears filling my eyes. The room broke into applause. Janet hugged me, whispering, "You deserve this." I laughed through tears. "Thank you, everyone. But tonight, I only want to say one thing." They quieted. I raised my glass of cider, smiling. "This year, I'm not doing the dishes." The room burst into laughter and cheers. Music started again, and we all danced, sang, and laughed until the lights blurred with joy. When the guests finally left, I stayed alone in the gallery. The fireplace still burned softly, and the last snowflakes drifted past the window. I walked slowly along the walls, touching the photos one by one. Each face told a story of courage, of rebirth, of women who had learned to love themselves again. When I reached the end of the hall, I stopped before one special picture, the old black and white shot Margaret had taken of me when I was 25. In it, I was laughing, sunlight on my face, eyes bright with youth. I looked at that girl and whispered, "You made it, Susan. You really did." The fire crackled. Somewhere outside, a bell rang. I felt warm tears slip down my cheeks, not of pain, but of gratitude. Margaret had given me more than an inheritance. She had given me back to myself. The next morning, Christmas Day, the sun rose clear and golden. The world felt new. I brewed tea, opened the front doors, and stepped out onto the porch. Snow glittered across the garden like sugar. David joined me with 2 mugs of coffee. "Merry Christmas, Mom." "Merry Christmas, son." We stood in silence for a moment, watching the sunlight catch the orange trees. He spoke quietly. "You know, I used to think strength meant being loud or in control, but now I think it's this, quiet peace." I smiled. "It's knowing who you are. That's real strength." He nodded. "You taught me that." Around noon, the women started arriving again, just to drop off leftovers and hugs. Janet brought a tiny tree decorated with little photos instead of ornaments, snapshots from our classes. "This one's for the gallery," she said proudly. I set it by the window. The photos twinkled in the sunlight, tiny frames of joy. Eleanor stopped by too, handing me an envelope. "Open it," she said, smiling. Inside was a certificate, State Recognition Award for Community Impact, presented to Mrs. Susan Whitmore for empowering women through art. I stared at it, speechless. Eleanor laughed. "You've made Charleston proud." I wiped my eyes. "I just wanted to make Margaret proud. She'd be over the moon," Eleanor said. That afternoon, David and I went for a walk by the water. The tide shimmered under the winter sun. Seagulls cried overhead. "Mom," he said after a long silence, "do you ever regret forgiving Melissa?" I thought for a moment. No, forgiveness isn't for her. It's for me. It sets me free. He nodded slowly. "I get it now." We stood watching the waves roll in. "She's gone," I said softly. "But I hope one day she finds peace too." David squeezed my hand. "You're too good, Mom." I smiled. "Not good. Just done carrying heavy things." Evening came early. The gallery lights glowed again, warm against the cool air. I sat at my desk, writing in my journal, maybe for the last time. I wrote, "A year ago, I thought my story was ending. I thought I had nothing left but dishes and silence. But life had other plans. It gave me loss so I could learn strength. It gave me darkness so I could see the light." I closed the notebook and placed it beside my camera. Then I stepped outside once more. The sky was deep blue, stars beginning to shimmer. I whispered into the cold air, "Thank you, Margaret. Thank you for reminding me that it's never too late to begin again." The following year, the Light Returns Foundation opened its second branch in Savannah, Georgia, then another in Nashville. Women from across the country joined the movement. They sent photos of hands, skies, smiles, wrinkles, and laughter. Every picture was a story of strength. One day, I received a package in the mail. Inside was a framed photograph of a woman standing at her sink, water running, her face turned toward the window, sunlight falling on her hair. The note read, "Because of you, I put down the dishes and picked up the camera." I cried right there, clutching the frame to my heart. Years passed softly. The orange trees bloomed and bloomed again. My hair turned whiter, my steps slower, but my heart stayed light. Every morning, I still took pictures of the sunrise, the sea, or the laughter of women arriving for class. Sometimes I sat on the porch and thought about my husband, about David as a little boy, about Margaret, and even about Melissa. Life had taken so many turns, but somehow it had brought me exactly where I was meant to be. One quiet evening, David sat beside me watching the sunset. "You've done something incredible, Mom," he said. I smiled. "No, David. We did. Every person who ever hurt me helped me grow. Every kindness kept me alive. Every scar taught me light doesn't die." He took my hand. "I love you." "I love you too, son." That Christmas, I hosted the celebration again. The women laughed, the gallery glowed, and the orange trees swayed outside. At midnight, when everyone had gone, I turned off the lights, leaving only the soft glow from the tree. I walked to the window and looked out at the falling snow. The world was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes when everything is finally right. I thought of all the years I'd wasted feeling small. Then I smiled because those years had led me here. I picked up my old Nikon, the same one Margaret had given me, and lifted it to the window. Snowflakes glittered in the warm streetlight like tiny stars. Click. I captured the moment, not for anyone else, but for myself. A simple photo of peace. Later, I wrote the final line in my journal. I spent half my life washing dishes for others, but the rest of it finding the light for myself, and that's enough. I closed the book and whispered, "Merry Christmas, Susan. You made it home." And for the first time, I didn't mean a place. I meant myself. If you're listening to this somewhere in Texas, Florida, or maybe the quiet towns of Ohio, maybe you felt small too. Maybe someone's made you believe your time has passed. I'm here to tell you, it hasn't. You still have a choice. Pick up whatever reminds you of who you are. A paintbrush, a notebook, a camera, a dream. It's never too late to start again. Because the light always, always returns. If Susan's story touched your heart, tell me where you're watching from. Your words matter. Hit like to help more people hear her story and subscribe to walk with us as we keep bringing light to quiet winters. I'm Susan Whitmore, and this was the Christmas I truly came home.